Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Growing Up is Overrated podcast. My name is Jen, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, T. When we started this podcast a year ago, we wanted to plant our feet in the sand and declare that growing up is overrated. But what exactly is growing up? What does it mean? We've touched on different aspects of it throughout the year, but today let's discuss what being an adult entails and how that differs from reality. Now, into the podcast. Hi, T. How's it going?
Hello, Jen. It's going well. How are you?
I'm alright. I'm a little tired lately, but what else is new?
Yeah, I feel that. I just made a big life change. I moved across the country, and we are now in the same time zone. We have been 2 hours apart, and now we're in the same time zone, and it's like pretty epic, but so we're trying some new setups, and it could change the audio, but maybe that's for the better. So
who knows? We're trying something more complicated, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, us being in the same time zone is pretty awesome, and I'm very happy and excited about it because it makes our life so much easier. No Absolutely. More like, oh, I need to go to bed. It's like 11 o'clock, and you're like, but it's 9.
But it's 9, and then I cry. I don't actually cry, but yeah. Yeah, man. And okay, so this is our anniversary of GUIO,
which is crazy. This is our first episode was released November 17th of last year, which means that this November episode is our 1-year anniversary, and I honestly didn't think we'd get this far.
I know. I thought, I was like, surely, like, maybe we'll do 3 episodes and then I'll be like, this is hard, and like not do it anymore. But it's been really fun, and we've changed our schedule a lot. We've, made changes, but it's been really nice to have this like project that we do together, and it's actually a really great way to like kind of like reflect upon our experience as we've been emerging into adulthood more and more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's been a way to analyze our own lives and talk to each other about topics that are interesting to both of us.
Yeah.
And it's been a fun way for us to communicate as friends as well as co-hosts of this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But we realized when we were brainstorming for this episode that we've talked about different aspects of being an adult over this past year, but we haven't really discussed what we think being an adult actually means fundamentally, and why we say growing up is overrated.
Yeah.
Which seems like a fundamental flaw in this podcast, and it's taking us a year to get around to answering that question. But today we're going to talk about what is adulthood.
Mm-hmm. I think that we have a very different idea from what adulthood is when we were kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, like, I think that both of us have really struggled, and all our friends who are similar age, of the idea of like, well, I'm doing all these things that I'm supposed to do as an adult, and that I thought would make me feel like an adult, but I still don't feel like I'm an adult. And one time when we were having that conversation, I was like, well, what is your definition of being an adult? And you were like, I don't know, like being my parents. And I was like, but you aren't your parents. Like, do you want to live an exact replica of your parents' life, or do you want to like find your own way and like what feels right to you? Like, that's going to be different. You're different people. You are not your parents, right? Like, and your parents are amazing people, but like, you are a different person, and so you're not going to live and experience adulthood in the same way. Like, we live in a totally different world from when they were our age, you know?
Yeah, which is difficult to wrap your head around sometimes, because I'm 23, almost 24 years old, but I still feel like I'm a child sometimes, even though I do things that adults do. I work, I pay my bills, I go grocery shopping. Like, I handle big parts of my own life, but I still don't feel like a grown-up sometimes. Like, what I thought being an adult was when I was a kid was, like, getting paid to do things, being able to go and do things that you want to do, having challenges in life, but having them have obvious answers. Because when you're a kid, you think that adults know everything.
Yes.
And as you get older, you realize that is so not true. And nobody knows anything. And if people say that they know stuff, they are just putting on a confidence front.
Yeah, or they may know some stuff from experience, but like they're not going to know everything. So yeah, I think it's a mixed bag of like sometimes you're going to get somebody who does know something, but like I think like the people who I end up taking the most adult advice from are people who are okay with saying, I don't know.
Yeah, and those are the people that you should admire, the people who don't know everything and know they don't know everything. Right. But also understanding that wisdom comes from experience.
Yeah. Being I don't know. So I kind of call this like the parent superhero complex. But like when you're a kid, you believe that your parents are superheroes. Or that like they must know better than I do because they're adults and like they have this power over me, and so therefore there must be a reason that they have that power over you. And so there comes a point when you're like 17, 18, or you're in your teens and you're like starting to take more steps towards adulthood, and you're going you get more frustrated with them because you're like, well, this is an obvious answer. Why don't you just do X like this? And but it's like, maybe it's not that obvious to them. And then the more you peel back those layers, the more you go, wow, my parents are really just humans. Like, you
and
find
adults are humans.
Yeah, like every adult in your life, your teachers, your principal, your mentors, your coaches, everybody, they're just humans. And like, the more you start to really absorb that, like, I think the more compassion you can have, and like more patience, at least for me, that I can have with people of a different generation, or like a different, like a vastly different life experience from me. Like, you find that common ground with that humanity, But I just, like, in general, like, I don't like to subscribe to the idea that there is one way to be an adult.
Yeah, I don't like the general, like, in terms of what a society thinks an adult is, like, in my opinion, an adult is supposed to be reasonable, level-headed, logical. Does not only enjoys adult entertainment, and no, that's not what I mean by that.
Only enjoys like sitcoms and the news, and
yeah, they don't like things that are deemed childish,
right?
Video games or cartoons, or Disney movies. Like, they only watch those things because they have kids, and therefore they need to watch them. Yeah, they're not like connoisseuring them. Per se. What else do you think a society deems an adult to be?
Well, it's really interesting hearing you say, like, logical, and, like, these are all aspects that I know that you really cherish in humans because you are a logical person. Like, or you tend more towards the logical side. But, like, when I think of an adult, like, a quality adult, I think of somebody who is emotionally mature. Somebody who has, like, level-headed. I think you said level-headed. Like, somebody who, like, can see a problem, act in an emergency, and, like, not be fazed by things. Like, I think there's, like, this, like, there's a confidence that comes with it, right?
Yeah, and that's part of why, like, we say growing up is overrated, is that, like, that confidence is kind of a myth. Like, no one's perfect all the time with their emotional intelligence. Like, and to compare yourself to that is unrealistic.
Right.
And the other thing is that, like, we are constantly growing. I think some people think adulthood is, like, the end of the road. Like, I'm trying to be an adult and that is my goal. But that is not something that happens. Right. Being an adult is recognizing that you are constantly evolving as a person.
Yes, 100%. That is something that we were always talking about in my degree program, because we were always talking about it in my degree program because it was just like a so we went through the full lifespan of human development in a lot of my classes, and you know, people tend to think about human development as, like, you know, your embryonic stages, like in the womb, and then like your baby developing, toddlerhood, elementary school, and then like teenager, and then okay, you're an adult now, there's nothing else, and then you age, like you get old and you die. But like there's so much more to it than that. There's like, you know, you can go through many like character arcs if you want to call them that, like, as you know, in different stages of your life. And you know, that's why I really love the like new word that we have for this, like 20 something, like 18 to like 26-year-old kind of stage, is emerging adulthood. And I think that is a really great way to explain that kind of like second puberty that you kind of experience, you know, like where you're coming into your own a lot more. Some people call like it not a second puberty, but like your quarter life crisis. And in my experience, I had a quarter life crisis throughout my whole first part of my 20s, and even into like this first part of my mid-20s. Like and it's only now in my later 20s that I'm starting to really feel a lot more confident in myself and like listen to my own voices, and like that are me and not just everybody's expectations on me. And I think that that's like really hard to grieve that, like the idea of what you wanted to be for everybody else. And yeah, that
like I sent you that picture yesterday or the other day that basically said that no one ever told me that recognizing and growing into yourself meant you had to grieve the person you thought you wanted to be.
Right.
And that's just like so eye-opening in terms of self-discovery, because you have these expectations that you think that you're gonna be, and then maybe along the road you realize, wait, I don't actually want to do that, but you thought you did so much that you have to reconcile with that in your own heart and mind. That no, that's not actually what you want to do something else.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's a lot of self-discovery to do once you're an adult. And I think that's another misconception that people have, is that like once you turn 18, you have like the set path that you're like, I'm going on this path and I'm going to achieve this and this and this in this order. Yeah. And I'm going to do all these things. And the path through life is never straight.
Right.
It winds, it goes backwards. Like, and you kind of have to accept that road bumps are going to come along the way.
Right. Yeah, like it's not this perfect conveyor belt. Which is like kind of the metaphor that I always talk about with my dad, of like, it's this expectation that you jump on the adult conveyor belt and you're like being assembled with your parts to become an adult. And like what means success. And so, you know, like the idea is that you would get on this conveyor belt, you would graduate high school, you would go to college, you would get a job, you would find a spouse and get married, and then you'd have a few kids.
2.5 kids, white picket fence.
Sure, you know, like you buy a house, you have kids, you know, and then you like spend, for a lot of families, you spend your whole life like taking care of your family, and you know, that goes, you know, even to taking care of your parents and you know, grandparents and that kind of stuff, which just isn't, you know, it's not always the path for everybody. And you know, like sometimes, you know, like sometimes finances like really get in the way, like that, the idea that like when you're a kid you go, oh well, when I'm an adult I can eat candy whenever I want, and I can have ice cream for dessert, be able to do whatever I want. And then like you get into the thick of it and you're like, oh wow, there's actually a lot of obstacles, and most of them are financial or bureaucratic.
Yeah, we've talked about like the struggle between when you're a kid, you think adulthood means freedom. And we're both Americans, so like this connection to our society and freedom is very strong, of course. Mm-hmm. And so you think, oh, once I'm an adult, I don't have to go to school anymore. I won't have adults telling me what to do. I can do my own thing. But when you get to adulthood, you realize, oh wait, I have the freedom to do what I want, but I have to have the responsibility to not do those things. Mm-hmm. Like, I may want to go on a vacation, but I don't have the finances or PTO to take vacation right now. Like, I could go, but that would jeopardize my career and a bunch of other things. So it's like, I can't make that decision even though I want to and have the freedom to do it.
Right.
Like, that relationship is really complicated.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, like literally everything you do, it's so much more complicated than you thought it would be. It's there's 1,000,010 reasons why you should or shouldn't do something, and most of the
sometimes doing something just means a leap of faith, even when you don't know the outcome.
Yeah, and like that's really scary, and I think a lot of people end up being stuck for a long time and end up experiencing a lot of depression and burnout because they think that they don't have any options because they're too scared to take a jump.
Exactly. Because a lot of the time you're going to have life-changing decisions and you just kind of have to make a choice, even if you don't know what that outcome is going to be. Like, we both moved recently. Like, you moved across the country and I moved to the city about 2 hours away from my house. And one day I just had to like make the choice. I was like, I've been wanting to do this, but I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to hate it. I don't know if like I'm getting in over my head, like whatever, blah, 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 blah. But then I was like, I have the freedom to choose where I'm going to live. Yeah. And if it sucks, I have the freedom to leave. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly how I thought that I had to stay where I was because I was too scared to make everybody else sad that I was not going to be there. And I was like, but if I don't want to be here and I'm miserable, then it's not even quality experiences that I'm having with these people anymore. Like, it's just causing strife in these relationships. And, you know, so I was like, I've been thinking about like making this big move for a long time, and I think I just need to do it. And if I don't like it, I'll give it a year and I'll move back if I want to, or I'll try somewhere else. Like, you know, but like now is the time. I don't have kids. I'm not married. Like, you know, like I can have these experiences and I can live my life and I can feel good about the fact that I don't have those what if scenarios. You know, like I know that I tried it and I either liked it or I didn't like it and I made it an adjustment. But I'm taking agency over my life, and that is so empowering, and I think is something that, like, I always think of like, oh, what would younger me think of this decision that I'm making? you know, or older me. Sometimes I think about older me too. And younger me, I think, would be really proud of the fact that I decided to, you know, like, do something for myself.
We'll pack up this discussion because we're going to have a discussion on moving later down the line. But the other thing about societal's impression of an adult is I feel like adults are so boring. Like, not to be mean, but they just are. Like, this is the expectation of adults is boring. Like, they wear boring clothing, they do the same boring activities, like they
get
have boring friends.
Or no friends.
I
know so many adults that have no friends. And that's so sad to me. Like, I know that, you know, I'm single and I don't have kids, and so like these things make it so that I, you know, can have these criticisms a little more easily. And so like I'm saying this with a huge grain of salt for you to take, but it's like I don't believe in the idea that once you get married and have kids that you can't spend time with people. It takes a village to raise a kid. You know, like, no human is without social needs. And, you know, like, you're gonna be happier if you're investing in your community and having them invest back into you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why must being an adult mean that you have to be married, have children, and therefore not talk to anybody else? Like, I want to rebel against that system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, like, whenever I have a friend who, like, gets married or has a kid, then I'm like, you know, literally, like, I want to help you. I want to be here for you. Like, you know, I want to, like, you know, you can't rely on you can't, like, solely ask your spouse to give you everything. That's not possible for any human.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I'm always like, hey, how's it going? Like, you know, like, reach out to me. I'm reaching out to you. Like, you want help with your kid? I'll change diapers. I'll watch him, and you can go out on a date with your spouse. Like, you know, these are all things that I, you know, try to offer to my friends who are married and have kids. Like, but it seems like it's really hard for them to take you up on that, you know?
Well, it's like they're fighting against what they think their lives should be when you offer those things to them. Yeah. And, like, our society is structured around the idea that you spend 99% of your time either at work or at home with your spouse and child. That's just the way that things are organized. The only time that I feel like that's different is when you're in college. Because when you're in college, at least if you're in a dorm situation, you live 5 minutes away from all your friends. You all walk to each other and hang out all the time. Like, it's a much different environment in terms of how it's structured around human interaction. And I think that it would be better if our society was more like that later in life.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that that's such a, like, huge contributor to why so many people are anxious and depressed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, we think that social media is giving us what we need, as far as, like, updates on whatever so-and-so is doing, but we're not actually making those connections by reacting to their image or writing a comment is a little bit more, but, like, it's still just nothing like actually spending time in the flesh, or at least a Zoom call, you know, or, you know, video call. Like, it's just not the same. And, like, so it's really easy to feel like you're all alone in the world. And that can be really hard to grapple with.
Mm-hmm. that's not to say that our slogan, growing up is overrated. That doesn't mean that we think that you shouldn't grow up at all. You should absolutely take responsibility for yourself
Yes.
and find your way through life. But the point is that you don't have, adulthood is not a prescription that everybody gets. In that, like, everybody doesn't have to do it the same way. You can be an adult however you want. Take that responsibility. Live your life how you want to. If you like toys and games and stuffed animals, and then feel free to like those things. If you want to dress like not how other people dress, then you should go for it. If you want to live your life in an unconventional way, you should do that. Society doesn't have to dictate how you live your life. Your family doesn't have to dictate how you live your life. You dictate how you live your life. And that's why growing up is overrated.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you have to be boring. Like, you can still be really interesting. Like, I constantly, whenever I interact with kids, like, they're like, you're not like other adults.
It's the best compliment ever.
It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. And they're just like, I feel like you actually get me. Or, like, you actually understand what I like.
Or just, like, you can experience joy like a child does. Like, I have a niece and nephew, and I was hanging out with them. This was a long time ago now. Like, still pandemic times, but still a long time ago. And I was hanging out with the kids because that's what I do when I go to family functions. And I was telling, I don't know how this came up in conversation, but I basically said, like, oh yeah, I'm an adult. And then she turned to me and said, no, you're not an adult. And I was like, that's the sweetest thing you could ever say to me. It just makes you feel good, because then you're like, okay, I am still a fun human. Like, I'm not a soulless adult who can't have fun.
Yeah, I just love continuing to embrace my inner child while also being somebody who's dependable and, like, you know, just a good friend, and that people can rely on me. Like, I thrive on the idea that people can rely on me, but they can also have fun with me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's all about just allowing yourself to feel that childish joy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with feeling joy at quote-unquote stupid things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think that just about wraps up our conversation. Let's move on to our silver linings segment. So, T, what is making you happy this month?
Well, this month I thought that we could kind of just give our thoughts on our 1-year anniversary a little bit more. But, you know, I'm just so absolutely grateful for any of you who have been listening. And this is really fun, and I enjoy it, and yeah, I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to be able to have just a little bit of your time every month, and yeah, so continue to listen, and we will continue to talk. What about you, Jen?
I'm gonna piggyback off of you, because I also want to say thank you for all of you for listening. And I don't think we've ever really told how this podcast started on the podcast. So it all kind of started as a joke with with some of our other friends who were like, you guys should start a podcast. You guys have very interesting conversations, and I think other people would like to listen to them. So I want to give a shout out, thank you to the fellas in space for all of your support and for all the hours and hours that we've spent having fun together. And thank you again for spending your time with us. We do really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for listening to this month's episode. If you want to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, we can be found at @guio.pod. New episodes will be released on the first Tuesday of every month. Please subscribe and leave us a review, because it really helps us out. We hope you'll continue to listen to us talk about our lives and hopefully learn something about yourselves too. And remember, growing up is overrated.